All right, well, thank you. I'm super honored to be here, and I really appreciate that you've all chosen to spend your valuable time here with me so we can talk together about how to work together successfully from anywhere. And what I'm hoping to do today is to give you some useful and simple practical tips and tools for working online as if you were in the office together. I'd love to hear just if somebody wants to shout out what are some things that you really like or really don't like about working remotely, pandemic or none.
Yeah, somebody in my room actually said that when they work from home, they lose weight. So I want to get that from them, what they're doing.
Yeah, working remotely helps you to be able to work with a wider range of team members across cultures, across borders. So it just gives you wider exposure to people and to projects.
Seems like the meetings have increased, and I agree with that.
And President Dan?
Yeah, I think one thing we mentioned in my group, like I work in California, my family's in Dallas. So working from home, I'm at home with my family. That makes it happy. But, not having the flexibility of working around the desk to meet my friends, that's just the negative part of it.
Yeah. I think, and one more thing we need to add is when you work from home, you tend to work more. So you work late hours, you start early, you end up late.
I think also not commuting is a big plus when you work from home. Some of us would do 45 to an hour commute every day. So just getting out from your bed and onto the computer is a plus.
When you work from home, you're not being micromanaged, right? You micromanage yourself and become more productive.
So it's all good, but you tend to work more. And sometimes the negative side, you don't eat on time. Like in a whole day, you can eat once, where you are jumping from one meeting to the other because everybody is telling you now it's online. Will you say you cannot come to the 3rd floor or to the 10th floor? You are there. The floor is with you.
But if you're a very social person, you love to be with people, it kills me that I have to work from home, not hug people, not say hi. That really gets me.
These are all really good points. And indeed, as I get into some of the information, I'm going to show there's pros and cons to everything. And remote is a new medium, and there are pros and cons to this new medium as well. Working remotely in a pandemic is not the same thing as working remotely. It's not the normal remote work, and definitely should not be seen that way. But a lot of us did it. And I think a lot of people, as we smoothed out the bumps in working this way, a lot of people realized that they actually preferred. There's some things about remote working that were better than there were in the office. And people are not necessarily just even seeing the value of being remote first. They're seeing the necessity. It's a business imperative. If we want our companies to survive, we've got to be remote first in some way or another. And there's different stages and different maturities to remote first. And not every company needs to be in the same stage. So like for one, the stage 1, and there's different models that you'll see out there of this, but stage 1 is everybody's in the office. Stage 2 is you're in the office mostly, but you can work at home 1 or 2 days a week. And stage 3 is everybody's remote, but you're all in the same time zone. And stage 4, you start to get into different time zones. And then stage 5 is this weird nirvana that very few companies have reached, but it's like mostly asynchronous work. And you've got people all over the world, plus they're digital nomads at the same time. So they're also moving around as they're all over. So these 3 buckets are where I think people should focus. Like if we start here, you can't go too far wrong. And that is 1, we need to define with our colleagues what is normal behavior on our teams, what is expected of us, what's results-oriented working look like. We need to make communicating with each other easy so it doesn't become another meeting. And we have to explore new ways of being present at work. What does it actually mean to go to work in the modern day work field, in the workforce? There's no one right way. Man, if there was a silver bullet, I would love to sell it, but there is no silver bullet formula. It's a series of experiments and things that you try for your team to massage into place what works for you. Because what works for one team does not necessarily work for another team. So that's sort of what makes remote working hard, is getting it right and running those experiments to see what works. So an easy place to start is to take all of your hour-long meetings and shorten them to 45 minutes or 50 minutes. And then the next step is to start to really evaluate, do you need that meeting to begin with? We've all just sort of gone online and we just translated and went online and we're having all these meetings. But the key to successful work remote is asynchronous work. So we need to start to seriously think about how can we break, what can we take offline and do on our own time, and what can we do online. And so what we need to do is one, make sure that the people who are in the meeting are the ones that need to be there, have an agenda and an objective for every meeting. That's really important. And then I worked for one company where they had a policy of no meetings whatsoever. And if you wanted to have one, you had to convince people why they should come. So that sort of changes the idea. So I actually had to write emails to people and say, I would like to meet about this, and I want you to be there specifically for this reason, because I think you can contribute this to that opinion. And that changed the dynamic completely. Even just asking people for an agenda before attending their meetings will reduce your meeting times by 30%. So one of my favorite quotes came from Agile Bill Krebs, who's an Agile coach in North Carolina. And he says, people think that they want to be co-located, but what they really want is high bandwidth communication, right? We want to be able to talk to somebody as if they're in the office with us. And with minimal effort, we should be able to just hear and see each other when needed. And I like to think of it as like Star Trek, right? So wherever you are on the ship, it's Lisette to Bridge, report. And Bridge reports, and there's no coffee shop sounds or screaming children in the background. It's crystal clear communication. And that's what we want to go to online. The idea is that we want to be able to switch from asynchronous to synchronous ways of working and going back and forth. So if we're all of a sudden in a chat and it's getting too complicated, we want to be able to hop on a video call, or you want to be able to just like push a button and ask a question and then see. But like we said before with infrastructure, in order to do that, we have to have rock solid internet connection. And as we've discovered on this call, we do not have rock solid internet connection everywhere in the world, which is why asynchronous is even more important in this instance, because asynchronous does not rely as much on the solid internet connection. We want to make it, in order to make it easy to talk to each other, we do have to have that infrastructure in place, which means the internet connection, but it also means a video camera or a headset, a phone, security protocols for the files. All of that needs to be in place in order for us to have a really good communication. And if we're going to go to this hybrid setting where some people are in the office and some people are remote, we have got to improve our conference room setups back at the office. So what you're seeing right now, this is the old style of conference room setup, and I see people shaking their heads as in they probably still have this style now in their office with the old spider phone in the middle of these long desks where you have to lean over like, hey Bob, it's Lisette, can you hear me? And Kemi, it's Kemi, can you hear me? And that is a thing of the past. What we want to move towards is a much more inclusive type of conference room, something more like this, where the remote participants are actually present in the room. They can be seen and heard by the in-person participants. The other thing is you want to train your team. So this is not necessarily a shameless plug for workshops, but also people don't know how to use the tools. And whether you train it within a workshop or doing one-on-one, when I interviewed NASA, they actually offer one-on-one support for all of the people that work at NASA. So there's a support staff assigned to each scientist to help them, because on remote teams, there's this new style, like with asynchronous communication, for example. Some people don't know what a threaded conversation is. When you start to get really good at asynchronous, you need to know how to thread conversations, how to reply with emojis. And if you don't know some of the basic stuff, somebody on your team needs to help with that. We need to have more patience and be more supportive, because there's all kinds of little things that people just don't know. So really, I encourage people to help each other out. So in general, in terms of making communication easy, the key is reduce the number of meetings that you need. So that clears up your time for deep work and also designing your own lifestyle, and improve the meetings that you have. One, by designing your online meetings with an agenda and an objective, so you have a true purpose for that, making sure that people could hear and talk to each other, and then learn new facilitation skills. How facilitating online is different than facilitating in person, and be good to put those tools in your facilitator toolbox. So when we work together at the office, we can see how each other are working, right? There's a lot of implicit information that we can just see with each other. We know where the files are stored. We know when people go to lunch. We know if somebody's at their desk or not at their desk. And when we go remote, all of that goes away, and we need to make our behaviors more explicit. So what kind of information do we need to share? And what are the security protocols in order to share that information?
When it comes to team working agreements, I think that's one of the basic things that we do when we set up teams. But what's a healthy way to call out team members when that working agreement is being violated?
That is a really good question. And I think actually one of the benefits of having a team agreement in place is that we can get away from the, hey, you're doing something wrong, and instead point to like, hey, we agreed as a team that we were going to behave in this way. This is what's on our team agreement. So do we need to change our team agreement, or is this behavior not in line with what we agreed with? So it takes away the blaming of a person and just saying like, hey, this is what we agreed to. Do we need to change it, or is this okay still? And then making that a team conversation. So the first way of creating presence is, of course, just turning the webcam on. Most people really don't like it. They don't like seeing themselves on the screen. They want to be in their comfy clothes. But if you are, you can still be in your comfy, like I have my sweatpants on, but you can't see that. The next way of doing it is just by our group chat systems. That's another way that people are creating presence, of course. So Slack channels, Microsoft Teams has group chat, even WhatsApp or Messenger, FaceTime Messenger, all of these different ways this is your virtual water cooler. And if your company is relying 100% on email, you're missing out on a huge opportunity for group transparent conversations within the company. And then there starts to be things like virtual co-working. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It's like co-working, except for that we go to a virtual office instead, or we work from a virtual office. This is a virtual office. It's an office that you go to online. Each one of these boxes represents a separate room, and each one of these circles is a person who's in that room. So you can only see and hear the people that are in the same room as you. But for instance, if I'm down here in the grotto and I want to go join the coffee drinkers, I would just double click on the coffee drinkers room, and then I'm in the room with the coffee drinkers. And then we'll take one step out into the weird, and that's these telepresence robots. So this is from the Suitable Technologies office. It's called the Beam Pro. It's a robot that you beam into just like Zoom or Teams or anything. But in this case, you can drive yourself using the arrow keys on your keyboard. So if you have an office that has a whole bunch of stairs and elevators and swimming pools, this is not the tool for you, obviously. But if it's a relatively flat office and you can drive yourself around, then this is one of the options. And then, of course, there's virtual reality. And virtual reality has been around for a long time, almost 30 years, but it's been too expensive for people to use in the past. However, it is starting to become, the prices are going way down. It's becoming a lot more accessible for people, and there's a lot more options for this. So this right here, this is a tool called Roomy. It's virtual reality for remote teams. You put on your goggles, go into your virtual office, stand around your virtual whiteboard with your virtual colleagues, and have your daily stand-ups here in virtual reality. So these are far out, but I wanted to at least show you where the market is headed and how far we've come from those old spider phones in the middle of the conference room table, right? Like there's a lot more options. Holograms are right around the corner, and we've seen it in terms of music. A lot of musicians have had holograms made. One of the most famous ones is with Snoop Dogg and Tupac performing together at Coachella. This is after Tupac had been killed. They brought him back as a hologram, and Snoop Dogg performed in person. And if you didn't know that Tupac was a hologram, when you see the videos, you would have no idea it looks that realistic.